Name should be good.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for the 20th of August 2020, which is due to COVID-19 restrictions, is being held electronically. My name is Paul Vagotis and I'm the chair of this panel this afternoon. I'm currently streaming from the council chambers in McMahon Street, Hurstville. The panel members with me today who make up the panel are Ms Helen Deegan, expert panel member, Mr Michael Levy, expert panel member, and Mr Erin Sellers, being our community representative. We are the panel who have been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specific development applications, including the development applications that are on the agenda today, in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The panel acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting is being broadcast as that of the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm required to advise you that under the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, this meeting of the panel is being live streamed and will be made available on the council's website. In accordance with the revised meeting protocols during the COVID-19 pandemic, interested parties wishing to make representations to the panel were requested to register their interests. A total of 13 representations were received and collated by the council officers and forwarded to this panel. The panel have reviewed the representations and have advised the council officers that they wish to speak with the following persons, which will be called during the course of this meeting in order of the items that are published on the council's website. And there is a list that I'll go through as we go through the agenda. If the oral presentations made during this meeting contain any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language, this may result in the person providing those comments being exposed to liability to which this panel or the council take no responsibility for. Any part of this meeting that is held in the closed session will not be recorded. The panel have received a completed assessment report from the council staff in relation to all 6 development applications. The panel individually have undertaken an inspection of each of these sites and the nearby locality for all of the 6 matters on the agenda today. We'll deal with each application in order as published on the council's website, being the first one, 33 to 35 Treacy Street, Hurstville, which is the mixed-use development, 608 Forest Road, Penshurst, which is another mixed-use development, 506 to 508 Railway Parade, Allawah, which is a 4.55 modification for a residential flat building. Now, there was to be the consideration of a digital advertising sign at 591 6 to 611 Princess Highway, Blakehurst. That has been withdrawn. So we'll then progress to number 4 Wadsley Crescent, Connells Point, which is a dwelling house. And then finally, the remediation works on the former Oatley Bowling Club site at 35 River Road, Oatley. As required by the local planning panel code of conduct, panel members are all required to disclose any conflicts of interest in respect to any matter on the agenda today. The relevant forms as prescribed by the New South Wales Department of Planning have all been completed and are tabled for the council to be included on the online minutes and on the council's website. In relation to one of the matters before the panel today, Ms Helen Deegan has declared an interest, and I'll just grab the form. It's in relation to 35 River Road, Oatley, which is the remediation works. So Ms Deegan will not participate in the hearing of that matter nor the determination of that matter. As we progress through the matters on the agenda, only those persons who the panel have highlighted as wishing to speak with or who are advised prior to the meeting will be verbally asked to make representations to the panel. The panel have received and reviewed representations forwarded prior to the meeting, together with all submissions provided during the assessment of each development application. Each written representation received via the application to make representations to the LPP form have been forwarded to the panel. I would ask those persons that are addressing the panel that they speak clearly and of a volume that will project into the speakers to assist all panel members and those viewing the live streaming so they can hear clearly what's being said. At this time, I remind these persons that any defamatory, discriminatory, offensive language may be that is used may result in the author being exposed to liability for which this panel or the council take no responsibility for. Once the panel have heard all the oral submissions on a particular application, we'll move to the next application. Members of the public are free to continue to listen to the broadcast. The determination of the application will be made, that's made in closed session will not be live streamed nor recorded. The determinations of the panel will be available on the council's website within 24 hours of the meeting being held. I'll remind those that are addressing the panel to don't hang up, because there may be questions that the panel members may wish to want to ask after you've made your submissions. So we'll now turn to the first matter on our agenda, which is development application 2018/0366, which is 33 to 35 Treacy Street, Hurstville. And I understand we have two speakers registered. Firstly is Mr. Yen Chen and Mr. Frank Stanistic. Can those people be made available, please?
I have Yenny to address the panel. Yenny, you may address the panel now. Thank you.
Yes, so I'm actually speaking on behalf of the Owners Corporation 90749 about the development being proposed next door to the building at 21 to 31 Treacy Street in Hurstville. I want to ask the panel, have anyone had a chance to review the defect report?
I hope to say seen that.
Well, we've reviewed the reports that have been provided to us, ma'am, the ones that are published on the business paper today. Personally, I haven't reviewed any other reports other than that one.
Right. So, and I've also have written a letter to council. Basically, now the Owners Corporation 90749 would like to object to the development to the neighbouring property based on several issues. So one is we have a defect, a major defect there with 800 pages of defects, including fire defects, and with the recent defects happening around New South Wales with Mascot Tower, Opal Tower, we are very concerned about the way how the neighbours is being excavated, which may cause severe damage to the property. 21 to 31 Treacy Street.
Okay, is that the extent of your submission, ma'am?
Yeah, I believe that a lot of owners have also submitted their application to council but have not received a response. So I just want to understand, with this discussion today, is it going to get approved today, or what is the process?
Well, the process is there's a recommendation before the panel to which we will consider in closed session after the meeting. It's currently before the panel with a recommendation to approve in principle the development application. Now, can I ask you, ma'am, in relation to your concerns, and I understand that there are some a number of issues concerning buildings within the Sydney metropolitan area, such as the Opal Tower and Mascot Towers, that have been a lot of publicity around those matters, and obviously investigations are undergoing with respect to both of those buildings, to which this panel has no knowledge about, but is aware of. Now, in relation to your concerns, you're speaking on behalf of the Owners Corporation for the adjoining property. Is it your concern that the erection of a building next to you is going to create some sort of structural instability to your property? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so that is one of the major concerns that the Owners Corporation have. Yes, we have already have defects at the property, and it's currently being addressed by the builder, the original builder. and there's a crack in the basement. And I know that part of the proposal, I think stage 2 of the development is proposing to excavate and also to knock down a wall in the basement, which may cause severe structure. Unless these issues are addressed, the owners corporation are not comfortable in approving, or they'll continue to object to the DA.
See. And where are you up to, if I can ask, in relation to these defects of your own building? Are they being pursued by the new Building Services Commissioner, Mr. Chandler?
It's currently being legally represented by Bannerman lawyers, and it's at NCAT at the moment. The owners corporation is pursuing the original builder, and the hearing is listed for the 1st of September.
Right. Okay. So there's NCAT proceedings on foot against the builder of your building, correct?
That's correct. And yeah, and I have been instructed to written to council on several occasions, but I haven't. I think I have heard back from council, but nothing firm. Several reasons why we object to it. It's also being Tracy Street, the one-way street, a very small street. They're saying that it's very dangerous when crossing the road. Having another building, 100 lot or 1,000 people living next door, it's going to impact traffic as well. So I think they've raised that issue as well, but mainly it's a structural issue that we're concerned about. Okay.
All right. Just hold the line and I'll see if there are any. I've finished my questions. I'll see if there are any questions of the panel. Mr. Levy. No. Mr. Sellers.
All right, thank you.
Hold on, ma'am. Ms. D, do you have any questions? No. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your submission. Mr. Stanisic, are you there?
Frank, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're with the panel now. Thank you.
Good. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes,
yes,
we can.
We can, sir.
Thank you. Can I speak?
Yes, please. Please proceed, sir.
My name is Frank Stanisic. I'm the consultant and architect for the project. And I'm here also with the project team, which includes Danny Daher, the client, Icon Construction Group, also Alex Wilson, property consultant, and Brett Daintree,
yes,
planning consultant.
Yes.
So any questions relating to planning, I will refer these questions to the team for them to answer.
Okay, thank you. And you've read the report, sir?
Yes, I have, and I'd like to make some comments. If I
okay,
can.
please proceed.
Indeed. The West Stage, as we call it, is the final stage of a 3-stage project at Tracy Street in the Hurstville Town Centre. Stanisic Architects has been involved at every step of the way since the concept approval by the PAC, the Planning Assessment Committee, in 2012. Having completed several DAs, construction documentation, and also advised during construction for the first 2 stages, the East Stage and the Stage. And these were completed in 2018, approximately 2 years ago. The completed building, which is known as Imperial, in fact received the award for residential architecture, multiple housing from the Institute of Architects. And I think that's the first project in Hurstville to be recognised in this way. The Stage 3, the course of application, is more of the same, having been envisaged as the final piece of the project. Stage 3 was designed to be part of the whole, and it was only due to commercial and timing circumstances that it was left out of the initial works. But it's also been designed to be constructed separately with its own core, its own entry lobby, and also its own parking. The PAC, in its determination, the importance of maintaining the building's approved and the integrity of the building's unique expression and urban form. Minor discrepancies in GFA were reviewed in the assessment process relating to the survey of the site's western boundary, the status of the winter garden, and modifications in the East Stage. These issues have been patiently worked through with council planners and the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, who now all are in agreement that the building's envelope should take precedence. The procedural resolution of this has been recognised in Council's recommendation for approval. And finally, I would just add that I'm very pleased that Icon Construction Group, who are an established local developer and builder with the highest reputation and standards and long track record of successful projects, purchased and now completing the project.
Okay, Mr. Stanek, that's your submission finished, sir?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Is Mr.
Do you
Daintree?
have any questions?
Yes, actually I do. Mr. Daintree, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Brett. Have you gone through all the conditions, 193 of them? No? Okay, I'm just interested to see what your feedback might be on the conditions.
We have no concerns with the conditions.
All right, thank you. I'll just see if there are any other questions of the panel. Mr. Levy?
Yes, I think it may be the architect who, maybe the planner who might be able to assist. I understand that this building is adding to the existing concept approval, and is something that had been anticipated when the earlier stages were constructed. In terms of the structural design of the building that's there and that capacity to then excavate next door for the development application before us, was that taken into account in the structural design of the building as it currently stands?
Yes, that's correct. Just 1 and 2, which have been completed, had a structural design which was related entirely to those 2 buildings, and the stage 3 would have a separate structural design. But they, as I said earlier, they at one time were going to coexist as a consolidated development, but equally they can coexist. They can exist without being separate. A question was raised earlier about the structural modification to the basement. The basement has been designed to allow vehicles to travel through the stage, through the centre stage to the west stage. They are not structural walls, they are non-structural walls, and they've been designed to be removed without affecting the integrity of the structural building.
Okay, and I think that goes to my question in terms of, and I understand there'll be a separate structural design for this building, but in terms of that connectivity between the two, whether or not that was factored into the design of the original proposal, and I think you've just confirmed that they're not structural where the connections will take place. If you could also just
restructure, I can say, but certainly those parts where the vehicles have to travel through from one side to the other side are non-structural walls, and they can be easily.
Okay, and wondering if you could confirm to us the treatment of the western elevation of the building, noting there's a condition requiring a treatment adjoining the car park at the lower levels, but looking at the upper levels in terms of the colouring material and finish of that elevation.
No, indeed. The western elevation, that's the wall. It will be constructed out of precast concrete. It's nominated for precast concrete, which is similar to what the existing wall is of the centre stage. It's not elaborated, but it's understood that the adjoining side will develop, and in fact, there's been an application put in for development of that adjoining side.
I might, if I may, Chair, I'll answer that question in relation to the adjoining site. The council itself has the plan proposal to put a storey building on that site, and in the future, the planning regime envisages that a building will abut this building at a nil setback on the western. In the meantime, there is a draft condition that talks about the treatment of the wall, and that condition will be.
So just to confirm, so that'll be a precast patterned finish that's proposed without colouring.
Yes, indeed. It's a precast pattern, possible to put patterning into those precast panels.
Okay. And my final question, most likely, I think, for the planner is just around the progress and timing with the major project modification.
You mentioned the application to the Department of Planning,
Yes.
the Mod 3. Yes, that is the assessment. We've had requests for further information from the department, which we've satisfied, and the department are progressing that application. The application, in simple terms, arose because there is an internal inconsistency in the conditions that needs to be resolved, and that is that the PAT conditions expressly require that the architectural integrity of this third stage be consistent with the first two stages. To ensure that that architectural consistency is maintained, we need to vary the GFA to a minor extent, and that is the purpose of Mod 3, which is now with the department.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Right, Jim. I think Mr. Levy, Mr. Deegan, do you have any questions?
No, nothing further.
Mr. Sellers, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, and your team. A decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website. So I do thank you for your participation. We'll now move to the next matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, panel.
Thank you. You're welcome. The next matter on our agenda is the application for 608 Forest Road, Penshurst. Registered to speak is Mr. Dimitri Sagaris.
Panel, he's just dropped out. I'm just going to recall him. Good afternoon. Am I speaking with Dimitri?
Hello.
Hello.
Is that Mr. Sagaris?
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Is that Dimitri Sagaris?
Yes, it is. Yes, speaking.
All right. Before
Sorry, I had
you're currently before the Georges River Local Planning Panel, sir. Would you like to address us?
yes. So my name's Dimitri. I'm the applicant for the project. Obviously support the development. I've just registered to speak, and just in case anyone has any inquiries that they wanted to ask about the proposal. I believe the proposal to significantly increase the amenity of the area brings a desirable density, which could lift up the game of the local business area there. Yeah, and just that's about it. So if anyone has any questions with regards to the actual design, yeah, feel free to ask me.
Mr. Levy, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Sorry, when you say the applicant, are you the owner of the land or the intending?
Yes, the owner and the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering, given the size of the block, whether or not any consideration was given to consolidation with surrounding properties in terms of assisting with the development of the site?
Very early stages of acquisition of the property. We did run through a little bit of consolidation with the neighbours. Yeah, things didn't really work out. They didn't want to actually consolidate with our property, so we've gone ahead and prepared plans to develop the property in its own right. Yeah, basically, the property can be developed in its own right based on yeah, the unit sizes and things. It all seems to work quite well.
Mr. Deegan, do you have any questions?
No.
Mr. Sellers? No. All right, Mr. Sagaris, I don't have any questions. Thank you for your participation, and a decision will be taken today and published on the council's website.
Perfect. Okay. Not a problem. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Bye-bye.
Moving to the third item on our agenda, it's the application for 506 to 508 Railway Parade. Now we have Mr. Theo Lucas. I understand you're on the line, sir. This is the application in Alawar.
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Lucas, you're before the panel. Please proceed.
We've actually gone through Council's report. This item was before the panel not too long ago, and it was approved. So now we've actually come back in, and it was discussed at the panel as well, and also with Council in relation to relocating the communal open space to the ground floor, and if that could actually work, we were going to come back in with an additional floor of apartments, which we have done. We have consulted Council and obviously worked with them to achieve the determination that we actually have, or the recommendation that we have with them, which is for approval. I've gone through the conditions. We concur with all those, and we haven't got any issues at all. So I'm here to answer any questions if you've actually got any.
Okay, well, I'll just see if there are any questions. Mr. Levy, do you have any questions? Ms. Deegan, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Mr. Sellers, any questions? I don't have any questions for you, Mr. Lucas, so thank you for your submission, and a decision will be taken later today and published on the Council's website.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The application for 591 to 611 Princess Highway has been withdrawn, so we'll go to the next matter, which is the application for number 4 Wadsley Crescent.
Panel, we have the planner and the architect all in the same location, so they'll address you together.
All right, thank you. That's Wadsley Crescent, Connells Point. And we have registered to speak Ms. Alison Davidson from Planning Ingenuity and Mr. Greg Jones from Innovate Architects. I take it that you're both together?
Correct.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and Ms. Davidson, you want to speak first?
Look, we're really here to answer any questions. We're in support of the recommendation. There's no conditions that are concerning to us in any way. I might just mention in the condition schedule, there's a numbering, more a formatting problem between conditions 11 and 12. It doesn't harm anything in terms of content, but I just thought I'd mention that. But other than that, we're just here if you have any planning or architectural related questions that we can answer.
Just hold on and let's have a look at those conditions. It's a condition, sorry?
If you look at condition 11, on page 392.
Yes, I've got it in front of me.
So if you have a look between condition 11 and 12, there's just a whole bunch of numbers that are merged into.
Right.
It's just a formatting issue.
Okay, that'd be something I would normally do myself. So yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I'll.
Not a big ticket item for us though.
No, I don't think much turns on it. All right, I'll just see if there are any questions of the panel. Mr. Levy?
Just one question. Looking at the trees on the adjoining site, and I appreciate there's the arborist report that's been prepared, but we had our site inspection today, but we're unable to access the site internally. Just wondering if you could confirm, given there's an existing house there, whether or not there's retaining along that wall there nearby to those trees, and will the proposal be carrying out further excavation within the tree protection zone?
Are they the trees to the east?
Trees to the east, yes.
Yes. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
The house next door.
Sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, just with those trees, and noting there's already a house on the site, is there existing retaining along the boundary or close to the boundary adjacent to those trees already in place, or will there be further excavation required along that area that could potentially impact on the tree protection zone?
My understanding is the excavation actually comes in, so there's a planter along that boundary, and that retaining wall is set in away from those trees.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, is there already a retaining wall along that boundary?
And that's pulled in. That'll be pulled in from the boundary where the stairs are.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So the existing wall would be set in and landscaping would be put in between the boundaries.
Yep.
Okay, can I ask the, Mr. Jones, if you're there?
Yeah.
Can I ask you to go to your plan number 01, issue E or revision E? You'll see to the top of the page, which is to the east of the site, there's a number of trees which are currently plotted on the adjoining property.
Yes.
And you show the canopies. Is it that brick fence that's notated next to that coordinate of 157 5830?
That's the existing fence.
Right, okay, so there's no impacts on those trees because they look like substantial trees.
No, no impact at all. No impact to the ground level in that area at all.
Right, okay. All right, thank you. Ms. Deegan, do you have any questions?
No, nothing further.
Mr. Sellers, any questions?
No.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davison and Mr. Jones. Thank you for your submission. And a decision will be taken later on today and published on the council's website. We now move to the last item.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We now move to the last item on our agenda, which is the remediation works at the at 35 River Road, Oatley West. Now, we have a number of persons registered to speak. Is Mr. Peter Mahoney and James Delay. Are they available?
I'm just calling them now because they dropped out.
Worth noting Helen's left.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Deegan, our expert member, has declared an interest in this matter and will not partake in the hearing of this matter, nor the deliberation or the decision making. So that needs to be noted for the record.
Good afternoon. Is that Mr. Mahoney?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Mahoney. You're with the panel now, so you can address them now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please proceed, Mr. Mahoney.
Okay, Chair and panel members, just to emphasise and elaborate upon some issues from our submission. Most alarmingly, the inclusion of Lot 106 in DP 1252069 in the DA has never been a resolution of council. So the progression of the DA appears to be illegal. In fact, the reserves plan of management, where Lot 106 is located, prohibits, and I quote, clearing of vegetation for views or any other purpose, unquote. Council has ignored our protestations in this regard. Secondly, although major changes are being planned for the reserve,
Mr. Mahoney,
has been lodged prior.
Mr. Mahoney, if I may, sir, can you slow down a bit?
Yes, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay, although major changes are being planned to the reserve, this DA has been lodged prior to the release of the draft master plan and the POM. Third, the trees to be removed provide habitat and food to vulnerable flying foxes and other native fauna, e.g. the powerful owl. However, this DA has failed to address the significant aspect, and Council is relying on a 2016 ecological constraints assessment when a more recent assessment should have been done. 4, there has been a poor level of consultation, with Council failing to relay notice of this hearing or the DA to the 200 odd respondents, individuals and organisations who had expressed interest and or made submissions in March this year. We note that the area was contaminated around 50 years ago, and to Council's credit, it has recently been covered to prevent exposure to the public. We therefore believe that there should be no undue urgency in progressing this project, and respectfully suggest that the DA should be withdrawn until all of the aspects we and others have raised have been addressed by Council,
and rectify it where necessary. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mahoney, please stay there. If I understand your submission, you're of the view that this development application is premature. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And through your submission, I also understand that you believe that the procedures haven't been properly followed. Is that correct?
That's what I believe, yes.
So the assessment of this development application, you say, is unlawful?
Yeah, particularly with regard to Lot 106.
Lot 106?
Master plan, yeah, Lot 106, where the most of the development will take place.
Right.
Okay, it's been deemed to be put a bit clear, the current master plan doesn't allow it. So what we should happen would be for the draft master plan and POM to go on exhibition, and then they can look at the remediation, retaining wall, and so forth. But at this stage, yeah, it's premature.
Okay. Is it your view that this land is requiring remediation? It's in a pretty
definitely. Yeah, most definitely. There's asbestos there, so it should either be removed, or the other alternative, obviously, is to sort of cover it so it can't be accessed anymore. Cover it, and soft plant it.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. I'll just see if there are any questions to the panel members. Mr. Levy, do you have any questions?
Just a quick question. You were talking about Lot 106. This application, I can see the site is Lot 100. Where is Lot 106?
Yeah, Lot 106 is behind. That's kind of the it's kind of it's called a closed road, which is behind that embankment. Okay. And that will be affected by the proposed works.
Do you have the business papers in front of you, Mr. Mahoney?
I don't actually at the moment, sorry, but I can quote the DP number if you heard that before.
Okay. All right, so yes, because this application that's made relates to Lot 100 in DP 1252069.
Yeah, I understand though that council originally talked about 106 in order to get these works done. But,
all right.
I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Sellers, do you have any questions?
Yes, just one question. Mr. Mahoney, you referred to a plan of management. Can you just confirm which plan of management you're referring to?
Milestone Reserve and wetlands.
And the plan, and do you know what date that document is?
I don't know. Can't be sure, to be honest.
Okay, and you believe that the plan of management does cover Lot 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything further?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Delai, are you with Mr. Mahoney?
Yes, he is.
Okay, Mr. Delai, do you have any further material or submissions to make to the council, to the panel?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen, for your participation. We'll now move to the next registered submitter, which is Melissa Derwent.
She's dropped out, panel, so I'm just going to call her. Good afternoon. Is this Melissa? Hello, am I speaking with Melissa? Hello, Melissa? I can't get her, panel. Do we want to go on to...
Yeah.
Hello, is that Melissa?
Yeah, we might call Melissa later. The next registered speaker is Graham Lalcher. Are you there, Mr. Lau-Chao? Hello, was that Brian?
Yes, it is, yes. And thank you for pronouncing my name correctly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad I did that. All right, please proceed, sir.
Now, most of the my talk is in the notes that I sent to you. As I said in that, I am in favour of the proposal, but I do have some reservations, similar to Mr. Marnie, I think. The lack of communications. I've been involved in some groups that have been campaigning for the preservation of the site from development in the past, and I would have thought that the group I belong to and myself would have been notified that this was coming up. The other thing I was concerned about was the paucity of the documents in the local planning panel agenda. It's very hard to read the plans there. You go to expand them on your computer and they become unreadable. So it's very hard to make out things like the details on the Gabion wall.
Right.
To see what the finish is going to be.
Okay, so
the other part of, sorry?
Do you have, what plan in particular?
Well, there were sections of details of the Gabion walls, specifications of what they're going to be constructed with.
Right.
And you just can't read it. So although you can see the sections and where they're going to be constructed, you can't make out what they're going to be built with. And I think that the design of, or the materials used in those walls are very important to make sure that they don't have a detrimental effect on the reserve or the bushland next door. We want something that is visually appealing rather than just an industrial style wall. But as I say, it's hard to see what they're going to be made from.
So this is the drawing that refers to the civil works prepared by EI Australia, which shows a typical cross section of a wall.
Where did I find it? Yes, it's a typical cross section of the wall, Gabion tender specifications.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm looking at that now. So what you cannot read the notes, is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I understand that would be standard specification, I would have thought, for one of these. I'm not an engineer, but I take your point.
In a similar vein, there is a tree planting plan there as well, which you can't just make out the numbers on it.
Okay. All right.
You have to actually look up the arborist report to get more details on the trees.
Yes.
So, talking of the trees, although I agree that many of the trees are exotic or not indigenous to the area, and can be removed, probably need to be removed to do the works, there are some trees, 2, 3, 4 and 5, which I can't see why they have to be removed. They're right next to tree 1, which is being kept. And trees 4 and 5 in particular are large enough to provide shade in any future development, and they are common in the local area. So I would request that those trees be kept.
So which trees are they? Trees number what?
2, 3, 4 and 5.
All right, thank you.
Trees 4 and 5.
Okay, thank you. Anything further, sir?
No, I think that's it. As I say, I'm in favour of the development with those reservations.
All right, just hold the line and I'll see if there are any further questions of panel members. No, still leaving. Mr. Sellers.
Just one question. With the retaining wall, did you have any thoughts about if you would like to see an alternative to the proposed retaining walls?
Well, one alternative that has been suggested would be large sandstone blocks. You see quite a few of those used around the place at the moment. But as far as the gating is concerned, nicely packed, sizable sandstone filling in those gavings, and to use plastic coated wire in black rather than just straight galvanised wire would be better looking than just straight galvanised wire.
Okay, so just to confirm, it's really you're concerned just about the aesthetic impacts or the visual impacts of the gabion walls more than anything?
Yes, that and the retention of those 4 trees.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. A decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website. If we could move to our next submitter, Ms. Kim Wagstaff. Ms. Wagstaff, are you there? Mr.
Yes, I'm on the line now. Kim Wagstaff, Mr.
Pardon me, sir. I do recall you making further submissions to this panel before, and yes, I should have known it was Mr. Kim Wagstaff, so I do apologise. Please proceed.
Okay, I'm speaking today on behalf of Oakley Flora and Fauna. As you've been told before, we started in 1955 and we've been going and expanded, and we're now numbering around 300 members, and we're concerned to make sure this is developed and undertaken in the most environmentally responsible way. OFF has actually welcomes council's progressing of this project. Our community's been calling for this work to be undertaken for quite some time. We just want to see that it's done appropriately and correctly. The first point I want to make, and backing up 2 of the previous speakers,
yes,
is that the communication on this issue, we're concerned about. The council didn't notify the broader community at the time this DA was put on public exhibition for comment, and now still has not given a broader community notice of this panel hearing. A larger number of local residents, including many members of OFF, participated in the early community consultation process, expressing interest in and enthusiasm for the project, and was promised would be kept informed of progress. This has not happened, and OFF did not make a submission to the DA exhibition, as we were not aware it was happening, and only found out that this LPP hearing was on within the last few days. Hence our late submissions. We note, however, in the report before you, it says the development application was publicly exhibited in accordance with the provisions of the Hurstville Development Control Plan, number 1. The notification was between 13th of May and 10th of June. No submissions were received. Well, that's a surprise. So council has only done the bare minimum it had to do in letting the community know about this DA. It has not done any more than that. Could I just get a message to council that the message is that this is very disappointing and frustrating for our society and the local community to be let down in this way. So I just asked you to take on those comments on board in regard to this high-profile community development. Following on from that, I'd just like to now raise a few points. Graham mentioned the tree removal and trees 2, 3, 4 and 5. If they could be kept, that would be good. The tree right next door to them, tree number 1, has been able to be retained. The most important of those 4 trees, though, would be probably 4 and 5, the lily pillies, in that while we're waiting, while the other trees have all been removed and we're waiting for the replantings to grow, these couple of trees would provide some shade for the local area in the interim. The tree, as far as tree replacement goes, there's 29 trees to be removed and so 58 trees to be replanted. As you would be aware, the master plan and the plan of management for this site have not been finalised to date. So we need to ask, will the capping over the asbestos containing material be sufficiently thick to not limit options for locations in the future master plan for planting deep soil rooted large trees? So I don't know whether the panel or any member of the council has any thoughts on that, but the panel, I'd ask for you to take that into account and question the depth of fill material is adequate for deep soil rooted trees for the future, so it doesn't limit the options that are finally prepared under that master plan. Moving on to the gabion retaining walls, they need to be designed to blend in with the natural surroundings as much as possible, as you've just heard. Gabions can look quite out of place if this is not done. We suggest that the wire baskets be made with a dark coloured green or black coating. The rock filling should be sandstone, closely resembling the local surrounding outcrops of the reserve. Also, a question, will there be vegetation planted in the area in front of each tier of the three-tiered retaining wall? This would also soften the effect of the wall structure when viewed from the track below. I heard one of the panel members ask if there was an alternative. Yes, sandstone boulders on the in place of the gabions, if they were substantial enough to hold up the height of the wall, they would provide more opportunities for wildlife to find burrows and nesting sites and habitat. But if that can't be done, then the gabions need to be designed to have the less impact possible on the aesthetics of the area when viewed, particularly when viewed from down below, the track down below. The next point is, with the large amount of earthworks to be carried out on the site and being immediately adjacent to important and sensitive natural areas, including the creek and wetlands and the camps and roosting areas of the grey-headed flying fox and the powerful owl, we expect the development conditions to be comprehensively applied and strictly policed. There's going to be a lot of sediment runoff. I noticed there's provisions in the standard conditions in there for silt traps and sediment control structures, but they need to be strictly policed and as you know, they haven't always been done in the past by either the private certifiers or council in this regard. We have noticed from our tourings around the area, and this is a particularly sensitive site. So also, in addition to this point about the earthworks, I couldn't find a detailed construction method statement in the documents available. So could you confirm that all the excavation for and construction of the retaining walls will be undertaken from wholly within the site? That is, no heavy earth moving equipment will be required to operate outside the boundary of the site, particularly from the southern and western sides. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. Obviously, if this was to occur, it opens up the potential for significant damage to nearby existing vegetation and soils, and should not be allowed. So I don't know whether you know the answer to that question or anybody there knows the answer to the question.
Well, that's the sort of thing that would normally be dealt with under a construction management plan. So in other words, it's a methodology of how the work would be carried out. And given that
Yep,
the
okay.
council is the owner of the land and the applicant to the application, I would have thought the council will monitor and control that pretty closely.
Yes, specifically in regard to whether they need to go outside the site boundary with construction machinery and heavy equipment. That's a distinct marking line where the contractor has to put up a fence anyway.
Yes.
So it's not going to happen inadvertently. If it does happen. So could that be specifically conditioned somehow in the the approval that you might give?
Again, this is a subject of a construction management regime, which is normal practice, and something that we'll certainly look at. At this stage, I mean, a decision hasn't been made as to whether we're going to grant consent yet. So that'll be something that the panel can take on board when it is deliberating.
Okay. The other aspect to that is currently there's public access immediately below the site fencing at the moment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use that. So if the construction equipment was to go outside that boundary, they'd have to close that off and further impede public access to something that they have had access for quite some time now.
There is a condition.
So that's another reason for closely specifying the construction method that we would seek to see happen.
Okay. Mr. Wagstaff, do you have the papers in front of you, the report?
I have the report that's in front of you.
Yes.
Condition 6 as well.
Can I ask you to go to condition 6 and 12? Condition 6 is what I was talking about, that they've styled it in the term of a site management plan. It's got to be submitted with the application for the CC, which deals with items A through to M inclusive. And then condition...
Yep, I can see that.
Right, and then condition 12. Condition 12 deals with the obstruction of the road or footpath. So they're the sort of standard offering that any developer would receive on a development consent where they're carrying out works which would affect a public domain.
Sure. And I can see that they open the way for approvals to use the road or the footpath.
Yeah, that's correct.
So when council gets it, if and when council might get that application in its regulatory role, we seek to have them refuse that. That's don't want to put spanners in the works or anything, but we just want to make sure that it's done in the most environmentally friendly way.
Yep, no, understood. All right, is that the extent of your submission, Mr. Wagstaff?
It is.
All right.
Yeah, subject to satisfactorily responding to these suggestions and ideas and conditioning the development appropriately, we can support the project.
All right. Thank you for your submission, sir. I'll just see if there are any other questions by other experts and the community rep on our panel. Mr. Levy, Mr. Sellers.
Yeah, just one question. Mr. Wagstaff, Aaron Sellers here on the panel.
Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Kim. How are you going? Just a question about the plan of management. Are you aware of the plan of management for this site?
It was talked about in the community consultation, which has been referred to previously back in, I can't remember when it was so long ago, but it was the next step after they had to put in place a master plan, which was what was actually going to be done with the site, you know, whether we put just picnic tables or something more extensive. And then to manage the site, there was a plan of management for ongoing management of this particular site.
Yeah, Kim,
and they were...
Kim, I probably wasn't talking about what is potentially proposed, but more what's in place at the moment. Are you aware of a plan of management that covers this site that's existing now?
This site, specifically Lot 100, I don't think that the Miles Dunphy Plan of Management and Wetlands Plan of Management covers Lot 100. It was specifically not considered in when the consultants drew up that plan of management, because the council had it taken out because they had ideas of putting up 9 stories of aged care facilities.
Okay.
So my understanding is that this site, Lot 100, needs a plan of management of its own under these new circumstances where it remains as public recreation.
Okay, thank you.
Unless it was reincorporated into the generic plan of management, I'm just talking off the top of my head now, but that probably wouldn't be appropriate given that there's going to be a contamination ongoing management plan into the future. So I'd suggest that might have to be incorporated in a specific plan of management for this Lot 100.
Yeah, Mr. Wagstaff, condition 19 picks that up, which is the environmental monitoring plan, which is the ongoing monitoring of the site.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's what I was just talking about. The suggested that might be the complication or part of the decision making as to what part of this plan of management.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your submission.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Our next submitter is Tony Gurgis. Is Mr. Gurgis there, please?
Good afternoon, panel members. This is Tony Gurgis from EI Australia, representing the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a submission to make to the panel, sir?
I was requested just to be present for any questions, and I noted some of the comments, which I'm not sure if the panel would like me to address any of those.
Yes, that would be ideal. Perhaps if you can start with the comments around the trees. And I know there is an arborist also going to address us, but if you could talk to us about the trees and then the gabion basket walls.
Sure. So in regards to the trees, so I can see some comments in regards to trees 2 to 5 being removed. At the time of our investigation, those areas or those trees were in areas which we consider to be hotspots of contamination. And in order to adequately, I guess, address the contamination issue, those trees were required to be removed in order to access that soil and that material to be placed into the capping area.
Okay.
Yeah. In regards to the gabion wall, there was, so I I could hear the comments related to having a sandstone wall or something of that nature, and that does have a aesthetic look, which can be quite appealing. The issue that we encountered with the embankment is there's two issues. Number one, it's slightly the slope is relatively steep, as well as the material that's in there is loose, uncontrolled fill, along with obviously some of the vegetation that's in there. To be able to stabilise that wall and to retain some of the material under a capping, the Gabion design was based more as a long-term, more effective way of avoiding further erosion later on down the track, including if we did go down the path of putting sandstone boulders, would be potentially a safety issue where those boulders could potentially move and roll further down the embankment and potentially cause significant injury to passers-by. And this was probably the major aspect as to why the Gabion design was chosen. Also, yes, the baskets are designed to be of a steel mesh to give it long-term use, as well as providing suitable rocks to be placed inside those baskets, which would then, obviously, over time, would blend into the surrounding landscape as time goes on.
All right. Well, I need to ask you a question about that blending. That's probably something that Mr. Zezgov can answer as well. If you're there, Mr. Zezgov.
Yes, I'm here. I can hear.
Okay. So, in relation to the comments that have been raised by some of the community members about how these Gabion baskets will appear or look, do you have any comments about the landscape screening or any treatment that you would, because we have a look at the cross section of your plans or the plan showing the Gabion baskets. What is the landscaping treatment? And I know on the plan from EI Australia, it shows some typical sections, for instance, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15, and it's got the words fill. Can you explain to me the planning regime?
I would have to say, so I'm the consulting arborist on the project. I've had no input into the plants, the landscape plants, the new plants that are going in, species selection.
All right, Mr. Georges, are you able to tell us?
Yeah, so that fill that's been placed on top is a capping, essentially a capping layer with the Dura fabric underneath that to cap any material that's beneath that that's impacted with the contaminants.
With that typical design and showing landscaping between, that's all that I can see.
Yeah. Okay. So what page is that on?
That's on.
My understanding in regards to landscaping of that area is this will be determined according to Council's master plan at a later stage.
Okay, well,
I think that's in the report somewhere too.
So page 20 of your report, Mr. Georges, shows a typical cross section shows some landscaping plants. Can I take you to page 20 of your report, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so can you just explain how you interpret the landscaping treatment? That's something that's going to be done down the track?
So my understanding is it's a master plan that council will be looking at in regards to planting. The example that we've got there is a typical, obviously it won't be a bare soil, or supposedly not supposed to be a bare soil look at the end. Once obviously the capping layer is installed, to council's discretion, it'll be either placed with topsoil with either grass or trees or a combination of both or small trees to plant it in those areas. That hasn't been finalised, but my understanding is it's not to be left as a bare bare soil. It's to be planted under the master plan.
Can I ask you, what would the typical soil depths be on those terraces?
They'll vary in some areas, but in terms of soil depth, just a minimum of a 500 mil cap over the fill that's beneath that.
Okay, well, Mr. Vesgoff, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, what sort of tree coverage or shrub coverage can we get with 500 mil soil depth there?
Look, pretty good, really. I mean, as it is, that site, it's got exposed sandstone boulders there, so we know there's a lot of sandstone under there anyway. It's probably not a complete shelf. It's probably reasonably sporadic under the surface. But 500 mil depth, look, generally industry standards would state that a mature tree, the root system would be in the top 900 mil of soil. So look, 500 would be pretty, a pretty substantial amount to get something well established in.
Something of a local character or an indigenous type planting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking, certainly.
Okay. All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions. Oh, sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Is that your submission, gentlemen?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Levy, do you have any questions?
Yes. One question, probably to both. A few community members have raised the question about there's a band of trees 1 through 5. I'm just wondering if you could explain what are the impacts on the trees as a result of the need to remediate, and would retaining those trees in fact limit the remediation that could be carried out, or would it adversely impact on the trees in any case?
So, as was mentioned before, I think that was the area that's mentioned as a hotspot. I know when I was on site that there was a test hole not far from there, not far from Tree 5, I think it was. Now, you just, look, as much as Tree 5 is probably the nicer tree out of those 4 that are being removed, 2 and 3 I wouldn't consider particularly significant. So personally, I think you're really only talking about sacrificing trees 4 and 5. I don't think, I mean, the aim is to remediate the area properly and once, and then get something planted. My job is to calculate the impact of the works on those existing trees based on the Australian standard for trees on development sites. So there's a range of calculations in that I have to work to. And basically the remediation process is not a sympathetic one. I've experienced it on many projects, asbestos contaminated soils, and when they conflict with mature trees, and it's very hard to try and retain a tree successfully and remediate soil around them at the same time.
Yeah, so in fact it would to carry out the remediation properly would compromise the trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You could try, but I can tell you from experience, very unlikely those trees would survive the process.
But does that potentially add to community risk in terms of not fully remediating?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. Yes.
That's all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Levy. Mr. Sellers.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. I suppose the core question is about the need for the retaining wall structure. Obviously, you've got 3 tiers there. It's very extensive. It's going to cost council a lot of money, and it's going to have a visual impact. So a couple of questions about that. Was a slope stability analysis done on that slope? And if so, and there was a need to stabilise the slope, was any consideration given to alternatives to the to a gabion retaining walls? For example, did you consider, say, battering the slope and then maybe using more natural forms of stabilisation, such as coir logs, for example?
Look, there was deliberation with the design for the retaining wall. What we need to consider is, in regards to not just the stability of the existing wall, was the contamination aspect. And this is where we were sort of, I guess, we toed and froed quite a fair bit to try and find something that would adequately make that whole area safe, both in terms of stability as well as the contamination aspect, without also, there are other designs that can be potentially applied, but these would, I guess, have a more extensive remediation aspect, which would then possibly result in either off-site disposal of contaminated soil or undermining of other trees in that zone, which council's wish was to as much as possible, stabilise the embankment, and we took that on board, as well as the aesthetics of having the gabion wall, and it's there could be a possibility for an alternative, but it'll mean that there'll be something else that'll give way, either the contamination side of things, or more material that would need to be disposed either off-site, or the contamination whole area would have to be increased to allow for more contaminated soil, to allow for a different design of that wall.
So just to clarify there, basically you're retaining the same slope as the existing embankment, is that correct?
To a certain extent, in a stepped manner.
Okay, so in doing that, you basically minimise the amount of spoil to be disposed of. If you were to batter that bank back and create a sort of a shallower slope, you would obviously be having to dispose of more soil, wouldn't you?
Correct. We would have to either be disposing of more soil that's potentially surplus to the containment cell, or the containment cell would then have to be enlarged, which would then give you less, I guess, area on the top part of the site, where you've got more freedom to design and plan for future works in the unimpacted areas.
Sure, I understand that. Was there any sort of consideration? Well, you said you did have those discussions. Was there any trade-off between battering the bank back and the cost of doing that and disposing of more spoil, and not having to do the gabion basket retaining wall, as opposed to the current design, in maintaining the existing slope and building a retaining wall?
Yeah. Sure. Look, that aspect was considered on a cost basis. To a certain extent, there was, from high-level numbers, it wasn't just a numerical factor that came into play with this. It was also the safety aspect, in terms of working in safety and disturbing of more material, which, being on an embankment, has the potential to then further disperse, obviously downwards along that side of the site, and this would also potentially create, I guess, more of a safety issue, both for site users on site and people who are tracking on the edge of the embankment. The idea was to, as best as possible, retain as much material in that area without having to do too much disturbance. Obviously, it does appear that there is a lot of disturbing during these works, but this was, I guess, the best way that we could possibly see to retain that material, retain the wall itself, and give it at least something that's potentially look aesthetically suitable for the area, considering that further landscape works would be conducted later on to beautify that area.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. There's one further question, gentlemen, by Mr. Levy.
Thanks. I appreciate what you were saying about the landscaping to be carried out is following the future management plan. How will the site generally be left in the interim? in terms of site stability? Is it intended to be grassed, or what's the finished surface of the site pending landscaping being carried out?
My understanding with landscaping of the area, potentially on the Gabion wall, would be native grasses and shrubs in lieu of the final master plan being prepared.
Okay, and on the balance of the site, uphill of the retaining wall.
So uphill would be grass, potentially grassed area.
So is that to be grassed as part of this process, or as part of a future landscaping plan?
I think it'll be for the future landscaping plan.
Right. Okay.
But, sorry, just to clarify though, it has to be stabilised following the works though. You can't leave a bare site there.
No, so it shouldn't be a bare site, but in terms of the safety aspect, in terms of contamination, the capping is there. There can be a temporary solution for putting either grass or shrubs as a temporary solution in lieu of the master plan.
Like a hydromulch or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your submission. A decision will be taken later today and published on the council's website. We do have one final call to make to Melissa Derwent.
Good afternoon. Is that you, Melissa? Hello, Melissa?
You.
No, it keeps going through to a voicemail. I have attempted to contact Melissa via email for an alternate number, but have been unsuccessful.
All right. Okay. Well, for the record, we were unable to contact Melissa Derwent. We did attempt 2 or 3 times. Six times. I'm instructed. So, no doubt, whatever submission Ms. Derwent made will be taken into consideration. So that now concludes all the submitters. And I will now close the public section of the local planning panel of the Georges River Council. And I thank everyone for their participation. Good evening.